Very warm good afternoon to all the students across the state of Telangana and all over the country. Today we are here to discuss about certain basic aspects of GST. Come on, let us now get into the world of GST by trying to understand the basic aspects of Goods and Services Taxes Act that has been enacted in our country in the year 2017. It has been enacted after much awaited, long discussions. Various committees have been constituted and roundtable discussions have been taken place. But at last, 1st July 2017, India has seen the enactment of Goods and Services Tax Act all over the country. Now, what was the need for GST? Is tax structure new to our country? Are we new to the concept of the word tax? No. Is indirect tax, and for the first time we are learning about that? No. Indirect taxes have been part and parcel of taxation structure of our country. But then, why GST had to happen? We'll try to now get into the prelude of GST. Before the enactment of GST, we had a slew of indirect taxes which were levied by central government, which were levied by state governments, and which were collected, shared as per the constitutional provisions. But then there was one basic problem of multiplicity of taxes, and then the tax bearers had to bear the burden of cascading effect of these taxes, which was taking place at multiple stages. So we all needed one answer. That was what GST is all for. It was started in the globe way back in 1960s. We are not one and only country who is adopting GST. There are almost 160 countries across the globe have been implementing goods and services taxes. Then, what were the objectives of implementing GST in our country? Let us try to understand them. It was actually with the intention of creating a common market. What do you mean by common market? We wanted to have one nation, one tax, one market. So what it all talks about? One nation, one market, one tax rate. In the advent of LEP way back in 1991, today wherever we go, whatever we discuss about, it is always globalization, liberalization, privatization. The moment India opened its gates for the outside companies to come and play, then we also had to make amendments at various levels, and taxation is no exception to that. So, to address certain issues, GST has been implemented. Now, we will just try to understand what are the major objectives with which GST Act has been implemented in our country. As we were discussing, it's with the major objective of creating a common market, that is across the nation you find only one tax structure and one tax rate. And this is done to avoid the cascading effect, to give the relief to the people who are actually bearing the burden of paying taxes at various stages, and also some of them were not even getting the benefit of input tax credits. So this problem was addressed by GST. Then we also had certain additional benefits. It also boosts the exports, because in the process of exports, when we say that exports are zero rated in GST structure, even otherwise also they were zero rated, but here we had the system of input taxes, therefore that encouraged the exporters to go in for more export trade. So in terms, indirectly, it also boosted the export trade. Then it led to the voluntary compliance from the point of view of the taxpayers, because the very structure of GST is such that it is IT enabled and you have to go on continuously loading, uploading various forms, etc. And also there is a continuous network that is following you 24/7. Every one of your financial transaction within the purview of Goods and Services Taxes Act was being followed, recorded. So that led to the voluntary compliance. Then it simplified the process and procedures for filling and filing of returns. How it was possible, subsequently we will be learning all those things, and also it provided online facilities for both the payment of the taxes and also for filing of the returns. Having seen the objectives, let us try to now go through what are the various advantages that GST regime is bringing out to its users. As we have seen before in the advantages, the first and foremost thing is it reduces the cascading effect which was witnessed by the taxpayers in the pre-GST regime, because there is this aspect of input tax credit at each and every point of the supply chain. Then the multiple layers of taxation was eliminated, because as we have seen, it is one nation, one market, one tax rate. Therefore, we don't have now all the combinations of VAT, service taxes, central excises, etc., but it's only one common tax, that is goods and services tax. Then there is a concept called as threshold limits, which has been fixed by the GST Act for the purposes of registration. Now, those players whose turnover is not exceeding the threshold limit, they don't have to register themselves. So, thus it eases out the procedural aspects of the acts. Then there is also this option of composition scheme, which is given to the small taxpayers. The dealers can choose if they want to make use of the lesser rates of taxes, then they can opt for composition scheme. Then here in GST, the procedures have been simplified and easy procedures are there, and it is user friendly process. All of us can actually get on or log on to GSTN network and then try to understand how the GST is levied and collected and what are the requirements from the point of view of the dealers. Also, manuals are available on the GSTN network. Then information is made available to all the stakeholders. Friends, just close your eyes and imagine for a second of time. You don't have to worry about your data. How much of taxes I have paid, when I have to pay, how much I have to pay, to whom I have to pay, what is the percentage, what is the rate. I think most of you all familiar with even the concept of tally and computerized accounting. You just mix and match tally, your ERP, and then GST and GST portal. I don't have to know, I don't have to remember how much I have to pay. Everything is made available. Flip of a button, press of a button, the data is made available for all the users. That is one of the significant, I should say, the advantages of the GST regime, where data is made available to all the stakeholders. Government can have the easy access to your data, I can have the easy access to my data, and all the stakeholders have the easy access to the data. Today, data, wherever you go, data is what we all talk about, and GST talks about data 24/7. Understand and underline this. Then there is clarity in the tax structure. The structures have been defined, the rates have been defined. I know how much I have to pay, and your GST portal is so very volatile, so very dynamic. The rates are being uploaded every minute. There is a change, the change is uploaded in the portal, and your system works in such a beautiful manner that there is a flow of data from one point to other. So everything is simplified in GST regime, and it is easy for the governmental authorities to track your data, to track your financial transactions, to track how the business transactions are going on. Friends, here GST should understand as a whole to really feel the beauty of GST. GST, in the next lesson when we move on to registration process also, everything is so very well defined, so structured. We will really feel happy that GST is made part of our curriculum, because here everything is defined. There is a role that is being played by the supplier of the goods or services. There is a role that is being played by the recipient of the supplier or the goods or services. Then everything is being tracked by the government without any additional efforts. So it leads to voluntary compliance. It also reduces the tax evasion. Friends, remember always in life, a 1 rupee coin has got two sides. if GST has got various advantages, it also has got certain limitations. We'll try to understand what these limitations are. Now, I've been talking about GST network portal, etc. Everything is volatile, dynamic, 24/7 have access to the data. Friends, that itself is the major problem, and also it is one of the major challenges. IT infrastructure. Now, think about a small scale trader who doesn't even have a computer in his shop or in his office. Then how is he expected to be uploading all the required documents, upload the data, go on entering the data 24/7? Sometimes it is difficult for people to have access to IT enabled services. This is one of the major drawbacks of GST. Then what plus point we have seen there also is a negative point to some extent. The moment we have learnt about threshold limits, just understand in some states if 10 lakhs is the threshold limit for registration, so those of the small traders whose turnover is just above 10 lakhs also are now required to register. So this is one of the problems that these people might face, because their turnover might be less than 1.5 crores, but still they're required to register because their turnover is exceeding the threshold limit that is being decided by the GST Act for a particular state, or as decided by that particular state government. Then there is one more problem of multiple registrations. What is this multiple registrations? If I have my presence felt in 1 or 2 states or 3 states or 4 states, GST Act requires me to seek registration in each and every state of my business presence. So that leads to multiple registrations. The moment there is registration, understand one thing friends, registration is a legal process. So there are certain things I have to follow, I have to maintain. So maintaining books of records, maintaining these documents, everything will be a problem, and sometimes it might as well lead to excessive paper work. And some of the products have been kept outside the purview of GST, like for example alcoholic beverages. It is kept outside the purview of GST. It is left to the respective state governments to levy GST. Friends, I started the lesson stating that there is some advantage with the implementation of GST, and we also talked about 1 or 2 sentences prior to GST and after GST. So what happened to all these taxes that were there before the implementation of GST? Okay, your central excise was there, value added taxes were there, then additional duties were there, cesses were there, surcharges were there. Now what happened to all these taxes? Don't we have all these now? What are the only indirect taxes that are being levied as on today? So now we will look into this concept of subsuming of taxes. There are various taxes which were levied by central government, and some of the taxes were levied by the state governments, and some were levied by the state government for the purposes of their local bodies. But these have been subsumed into GST because our motto was one nation, one tax system, and one tax structure, and one market. So now we will just see how these taxes, or what are the taxes that were subsumed. Now I think you all must have heard about central excise duty. What is central excise duty? It is the duty that is levied at the point of manufacture. Today central excise duty has been subsumed into GST. Then similarly, additional duties of excise on goods of special importance, and additional duties of customs and service taxes, and also central surcharges and cesses were some of the taxes that were levied by central government before GST and are subsumed into GST. Now we will also look into those indirect taxes which were being implemented by the state government but now subsumed into GST. What are they? Value added taxes, central sales tax, luxury tax, entry tax, taxes on advertisement, entertainment, amusement, and also taxes on betting and gambling, and state surcharges and various other cesses. These are some of the indirect taxes, or the major indirect taxes that were levied by state governments before GST, but now all these taxes have been subsumed into GST. Friends, when we were learning about those taxes which were subsumed into GST, we'll also now look at those which have been kept outside GST or which have not been subsumed into GST. What are they? Basic customs duty. Even today, customs duty, basic customs duties is levied by Customs Act and it is not subsumed into GST. Anti-dumping duty. What is the concept of anti-dumping duty? Dumping. If your economy is under the threat of this dumping by way of exports from foreign countries, then our country will safeguard our interests by imposing anti-dumping duties. In the same manner, even safeguard duty also. Safeguard duties is to safeguard your local or domestic markets from the threat of unwarranted exports from the countries outside India. Then even today, duties of excise on alcoholic liquors, opium, Indian hemp have been kept outside GST, and stamp duty is with the state governments. It is the respective state governments, they decide the rate of the stamp duties, and that is levied by the state governments and collected by the state governments at the time of sale or transfer of immovable properties. Even stamp duties has not been subsumed into GST. Then professional tax also is not subsumed into GST. Now, we will look into those commodities which have been kept outside the purview of GST. As discussed before, alcoholic liquor for human consumption has been kept outside the purview of GST. Friends, remember one thing, if let it be a central government or a state government, your power to levy taxes, power to impose taxes is derived from constitution. So let it be central government or the state governments, they get these powers by way of Union Lists 1, 2 and 3 that have been mentioned in the constitution. Here alcoholic beverages, alcoholic liquor is a part and parcel of the state list. That is why it is left to the respective states to take a call and decide what should be the taxes leviable on the alcoholic beverages, etc. But even today, we collect VAT and central excise, but not GST on alcoholic beverages. Now, at this point of time, it is important for us to know that GST is a dual levy of tax. What do you mean by dual levy? Friends, you also know India, we have a three-tier structure of taxation. At the apex, we have central government. At the middle level, we have state governments. At the bottom, we have the local governments. So here, when we are trying to talk or subsume various taxes levied by central government and various taxes levied by state governments into GST. Now, you mean to say that states will not be having any more tax revenues or central government will not be having any more tax revenues? That is not possible. Then you are saying all the time that it is one nation, one tax structure, one tax rate. Then again, I am also saying dual tax structure. Now, what is this dual tax structure all about? In this tax structure, we have central government which levies and collects central goods and services taxes, and state governments levies and collects state government goods and service taxes. India, you should also talk about your union territories. So, wherever union territories do not have their separate legislatures, there is also union territory goods and services taxes. So, this is the dual tax structure where central government will levy and impose central goods and service taxes, and state governments will levy and impose state government goods and service taxes on all those transactions which are taking place within a state, within one state. What do I mean by within a state? That is where the buyer and the supplier are located in only one state. Then we also have transactions between the state. Let us say buyer from Telangana is buying from a supplier who is located in Andhra Pradesh. So now what's happening? Transaction is taking place between two different states. Then here there is this integrated goods and services taxes which will be levied and collected by the central government. So that is what we mean when we say that we adopt a dual structure of taxation. Friends, remember 2017 1st of July, when India witnessed the enactment of GST, all newspapers, now being a commerce graduate and a commerce teacher, I had all this fancy of reading all the headlines in all the newspapers, trying to find out what's happening everywhere and what were the challenges. Friends, remember, always in life, challenges will be there and challenges need to be converted into an opportunity. Now, what were the challenges faced by the GST infrastructure or the GST people, the authorities who were actually placed at the central level or the authorities placed at the state level? Now, we'll just try to go through the various challenges that were faced at the time of implementation of GST. The first and foremost challenge is making the taxpayer aware of the new structure, new taxation, new regime, new rates, more so, new procedures. Friends, remember, always we have this inertia in life. We are never comfortable with a change. We have that kind of a problem for accepting a change. Now 12 o'clock, 11:59, 16th of July, I had a good night's sleep. 12 a.m. onwards GST started. Just think like this, a dealer who is sitting in his office 10 a.m. 17th of July 2017. Now all these things are just dumped on him. You have to maintain the records, you have to upload your data, you have to fill the documents, you have to file the returns, A, B, C, so many things are there. Then how do we make these people aware of? This was the biggest challenge that was faced by the authorities, that is making people aware of the GST procedures, the aspects of GSTs. Then another important challenge was uploading of the invoices. Friends, to understand the system, we really have fun, but just put yourselves in the shoes and try to understand the practical difficulties that you might face when you are required to go on uploading all the documents, all the related invoices for all the transactions that you are transacting in a particular day. So continuous uploading of invoices was another challenge that was actually felt by the people, because they have to now go in for a person who is aware of the system, and also the data need to be accurate, because there is one central body which is monitoring my data, which is maintaining my database, where data is being shared by all the stakeholders, and there is also this element of claiming input tax credits on the basis of the data that suppliers furnish. So my data should tally with the data that is given by the supplier. So this is the biggest challenge that was faced, that is the continuous matching of the details, that is whatever supplier is feeding, then that should match with the data that I have in my records. Then how do I track these invoices? Friends, just see, I am supposed to be getting input tax credit, but remember, I will not get input tax credit on the basis of the data that I feed. My input tax credit I will be entitled to receive only on the basis of the data that is given by the supplier of the goods and services. How beautiful the system is, see. So whoever is supplying, that person has to give the data. Then I am the person who has to claim the credit. I cannot claim the credit unless and until my data is uploaded by the supplier, and data should be appropriate data. It should be correct data, valid data. Any kind of discrepancies here, I will not be in a position to claim my input tax credit. So, I should continuously monitor, continuously track what is the data, how many invoices have been uploaded, what is the difference and how many are still in pending. So, continuously I have to monitor. Then, as I was telling you, inertia, the problem of accepting the change, the transition or transiting from the pre-GST era to post-GST era is again a major problem, because till that point of time my documents were different, the procedures were different, the aspects were different. Now suddenly I have to shut down that window and completely transit into a new journey, new window, new lifestyle, new document, new uploading. So, this really takes a lot of problem, and GST Act has defined, has given us the procedure how easily a person can transit from pre-GST era to post-GST era. So, transition annexures also have been defined under GST, and we only have to follow this. But then, okay, everything is clearly said, but all said and done, it is I who have to transit. So, we had these challenges. We will discuss about the major principles of GST. Friends, our entire GST system is based on two important aspects or principles. What is that? Destination principle. What is destination? The supply of goods and services is subject to levy of taxes at the point of consumption, thus replacing the source based tax system with the destination based tax system. And also there is another concept of value added principle. What is this value added principle? We all know when a product starts its journey from the point of manufacture to the point of consumption, it processes through various channels. So, every channel, every stage, there is this something what is called as value additions. So, wherever values are added, there is this component of taxes. So, each and every stage GST is levied and collected throughout the chain of the supply, but also remember there is also this input tax credit. Now, we will try to wind up this by understanding or just trying to focus on the important aspects. Now, what is the basis? We have understood about dual tax structure, that is CGST, SGST, ITGST, that is integrated tax, goods and services tax. Now, what is the basis? Girls and boys and friends across the state of Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, CGST Act, SGST Act, UTGST Act and IGST Act are the various acts that govern the provisions for levy and collection of taxes at intrastate level and interstate level on all the services and goods, and then all these are possible with the help of various GST rules. If you just try to understand how GST is made possible, it is the implementation part of GST is made possible with various rules, various provisions, various schedules. Like you have composition rules which will give us the basics of composition, that will help us in understanding what is composition, what are the rates, what are the dates, what are the due dates, how much of taxes I have to pay. Then all these rules will help me in understanding the composition part of GST. Then valuation rules will help the traders in valuing their products for GST purposes. Transition rules will help us to transit from pre-GST to post-GST era. Then input tax credit rules will help us in understanding how to claim input taxes on various transactions at various points. Then invoice rules will help us in understanding how an invoice has to be prepared and in how many copies have to be prepared, who has to prepare, and what are the details that are to be furnished there. All these things, and then what is the time of issue of the invoice, what should be the date of the issue of invoice, all these will be determined by the invoice rules. Then we have likewise payment rules, refund rules, registration rules and return rules, which will help the stakeholders in understanding how they have to comply with the provisions of GST Act. And then there is also this notifications and circular. Friends, your authorities are making their rules. Legislature is passing the act. How is it that we sitting here or anywhere, we are aware of these rules and regulations? There is something called as circulars, notices, etc., which is an official, a notification which will be printed in the official gazette, and it is through these official gazettes we come to know about various acts, rules, provisions, etc. Now, we were discussing about Goods and Services Tax Network. It is a non-profit government organization. It manages the entire IT system, the GST portal. It connects all of us with beautiful interface, and it has the master database. And then it is one thing which works 24/7, follows us, monitors us, and all of us who are registered here, we will be getting Goods and Services Tax Identification Number. We'll discuss about this in next lesson. And also there is something called as GST Council, which is there governing, sitting, taking in its count or all the members, starting with your finance minister of the country, who is acting as chairman of this GST Council, with the help of ministers for state finance, with the help of finance ministers of every state. They sit together and discuss how the act should be, reaching the people, and how the tax rate should be determined, and what kind of, the decisions need to be taken. Everything will be discussed in this GST Council meetings, and it is the apex body which actually governs the entire system of GST in our country. Thank you.